just before noon, members of the Scottsdale Police Department Special Assignments Unit had located two suspects from a previous dangerous felony crime in a vehicle in the Moreno's parking lot here just behind me at Horne and Broadway in Mesa. Initially inside the vehicle were two suspects and one victim. All three are adult males. One suspect eventually left the vehicle to go inside the restaurant. At that point, detectives moved in to rescue the victim inside the vehicle. During that rescue operation is when the officer-involved shooting occurred. Detectives were able to rescue the victim, who was not harmed. Then they held their positions until additional police support arrived from the Mesa Police Department. The second suspect, who had gone inside the restaurant, remained inside and then eventually surrendered to the Mesa PD SWAT team without incident. From there, the restaurant, the parking lot, the different vehicles in that area were all searched to make sure that no one else was injured, either from the community or that we didn't have any suspects possibly outstanding. No other injuries were reported from the community from this incident. During the incident, two officers sustained minor injuries, and we're not going to go into any detail on what those are at that point in time, but we do think it's important to note that no officers were shot by suspects in this incident. I know sometimes when we say officer-involved shooting, that can mean that there were maybe shots being fired both ways. At this time, we can just verify that the officers were not shot by the suspects. Behind where the cameras are is a school, and local schools that were nearby this incident were placed on lockdown until we were sure that this situation was contained to this parking lot and that we could then safely open up the area. I was told that the school was actually able to get out on time, so kids were released on time, which is always an important thing in something like this. The suspect, who was still in the vehicle when the victim rescue was taking place, was shot and was pronounced deceased at the scene by a SWAT medic working with the detectives from the Special Assignments Unit and the Scottsdale SWAT team. This incident is being investigated by the Mesa Police Department, the Scottsdale Police Department, and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. The detectives and officers involved in the officer-involved shooting have been placed on post-critical incident leave, which is standard for an officer-involved shooting in our department. And we will be obviously following up with that information as best we can. I can tell you that this investigation here tonight at Horne and Broadway will be going into likely the next morning, so tomorrow morning. And I know we've been working with the Mesa Police PIO group as well to make sure that we're providing updates on what we can. Meanwhile, they're providing updates to their community about road closures, the incident scene, and things of that nature. So please look also to the Mesa PD PIO group. They post on X as well to see updates about possible traffic restrictions and things going on from that. But that is some of the preliminary information we can tell you right now. I can answer some limited questions based on the information that we shared here today. And so I'll go ahead and take some of those questions now.
Officer Boland, George
Yes.
Bonke, ABC 15. Wanted to see what is it that makes these suspects dangerous? Why were they in pursuit? You just mentioned a felony crime.
That's the only information that I'm at liberty to say right now, that they are suspected in being involved in a dangerous felony crime. And why that's important is because when we send our special assignments unit or our SWAT team out to usually do apprehensions on people that are suspected of committing some type of violent crime, whether they used a weapon or whether the level of violence used in the commission of that crime was so egregious that it would necessitate having a team response with a myriad of options available to handle the situation. And so that's part of what that was. The details of what that ongoing investigation are, I can't share at this time.
As far as the victim, who was the victim and why was he, because you mentioned it was 3 males, why was he considered a victim at the time?
So some of the information about how the victim ended up in that vehicle with those two suspects is part of that greater ongoing investigation. Again, we can confirm that there's 3 males. We can confirm that thankfully the victim was not injured during this, that the rescue mission was successful from that standpoint. But the reasons of how and why are definitely some things our investigators are still looking into, and then hopefully answers that we can provide in a later update, but we just can't share that information at this time. Alexis.
Do we know how the suspects knew the victim?
That information, again, is still something our detectives are trying to piece together, is how the relation was between the suspects and the victim, and we'll hopefully be able to provide updates on that at another time.
Just a follow-up question. I know you said it's kind of limited information, but we had heard maybe this sounded like a kidnapping. Are you able to say anything on that?
My understanding on that was that our special assignments unit deemed it necessary to go rescue that victim was not able to self-rescue out of that vehicle on their own, and that's why the decision was made to go in on a rescue mission for that.
It was initially, sorry, Hector with Inicio.
Yeah.
Others that I was speaking to, they were saying it initially started with a persecution off the freeway, or
I'm not sure I heard that question that you're actually
were
asking.
they following the vehicle, or did they actually, report that the vehicle was actually parked at the restaurant?
Our special assignments unit detectives basically caught up with the vehicle in this parking lot here. And so what I can tell you is just that's how the sort of the nexus is in this parking lot of this restaurant, is that's where the basically the vehicle that the suspects and the victim were in. This is where it came to a stop, essentially.
And just a follow-up question as well, because Scottsdale police officers are involved, does that mean that it started in Scottsdale and the officers were following the vehicle until they got to this point?
There is a Scottsdale nexus to all of this, and Arizona peace officers are typically state certified, which means we can cross different jurisdictional boundaries to potentially effect arrests, conduct investigations. So it's a useful tool to the community to have officers that don't necessarily need to always pass off investigations to other agencies. And so that's part of how we got here, was that our special assignments detectives are able to go between cities when they need to effect an arrest, or in this case, they were trying to rescue the victim out of this vehicle.
Some of the witnesses described this as a shootout, but that's not necessarily the case, because you mentioned that the suspect didn't ever fire back. Is that true?
All the particulars and the more specific details about the officer-involved shooting are definitely still things that our investigators are looking into. Again, during that rescue of that victim from the vehicle was when the officer-involved shooting occurred, and so our special assignments detectives saw something or experienced something that they felt was a deadly force encounter, and that they needed to then respond with deadly force themselves and get into that shooting.
Yeah. So again, an obvious follow-up would be like something like a possible weapon or something like that. That's something you wouldn't be able to answer, is it?
Not able to answer that question at this time, unfortunately, but again, that's something that we hope to provide further updates on as we go along.
A video was shared by some folks about a man who was walking backwards without a shirt and his hands behind his head. Was that one of the people that was detained?
That, we believe, is going to be the second suspect who surrendered basically without incident from the restaurant.
Also some heavy guns, long rifles that were staged on top of apartment buildings surrounding the building. Maricopa County, choppers overhead, a lot of different focus in there. Was there ever a harm, do you think, to people inside the restaurant at that time?
I don't have information right now that lets me be able to share how many people were in the restaurant at that time, so I'm not sure about that. I think that when the rescue mission basically turned into this officer-involved shooting as more resources were showing up, sometimes when that happens, then officers that have the proper training and equipment might take some of those larger guns that you can see. I think I saw some news footage also, what appeared to be a rifle on like a tripod. Sometimes that's even just for observation, because those rifles are equipped with magnification scopes. Those officers or detectives can then provide intelligence back to the team that's on the ground that they may not be able to see on their own. And so that can be a very, very valuable resource to have. And it can look a little intimidating, but for the most part, it is going to be for information gathering. Sometimes we can't fly drones in, and helicopters also have limitations of what they can see from certain perspectives and altitudes as well. So,
Are we able to confirm if one of the suspects were or was armed?
We're not able to confirm that at this point. Again, the officer involved shooting happened during that rescue of the victim from the vehicle.
Are you able to say the ages or appearance also?
We know that all 3 males involved with this are adults. We're not releasing ages or names at this time. Would there be any other questions? You kind of came mic'd up a little bit later, or are you good?
Oh, did he come out? Did the suspect come out voluntarily? Was there a lot of communication with that, or what was that process like?
I know the victim, I'm sorry, the second suspect who was inside the restaurant did come out basically after being negotiated with, it looked like, to then the point of where basically they gave up without any further incident. There was no greater use of force that happened. Yes, sir.
There were 2 departments. How many officers responded to this?
There were numerous officers from both the Scottsdale Police Department and then as well as the Mesa Police Department. So from Mesa, I know that the Mesa SPD SWAT team came out here, as well as then I think some patrol resources. Obviously, an incident like this takes many folks helping to block roadways, directing traffic, helping to secure the scene here so the investigators can do the work that they need to do to make sure that this gets properly investigated.
Last question here. How long ago has it been since the felony or that other crime scene dangerous that you're telling us about, that the suspects were accused of committing a crime previously? How long ago has that been?
It's been within the past few months, is what I can tell you right now.
3 months.
Yeah.
Do we know how many officers shot at the suspect?
I can tell you that it was more than 1 officer involved in this shooting at this time. Again, the investigators are still working on going through the scene, examining the evidence that is available to see how many that will end up being. And so we don't want to say a number right now because we just aren't really sure exactly yet, but we know it was more than 1. All right.
The victim wasn't harmed.
The victim was not harmed, thankfully. Correct. All right. So I think we're kind of wrapping things up. That's all the information that we have for you right now. I do not foresee us having any further updated information this evening. We will work through what we can to provide some type of update tomorrow. I doubt that will be for the 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. morning shows. It will likely be something more midday. So I just want to kind of set some realistic expectations on that. We don't want to necessarily just come out and just say no update, no update, no update. So for right now, again, look to something probably more of an update, possibly midday or early afternoon tomorrow.
The
Would be.
intersection, how long will it be closed, you think, till tomorrow?
I was told by one of the investigative supervisors it'll probably be through the morning tomorrow. And so that's a good question for parents that might need to be worried about school tomorrow, is making sure they have alternate plans. That Horne and Broadway will be probably locked down probably through school arrival time. They should at least plan for that. And hopefully Mesa PD will be able to release it maybe before that. And again, they'll update that on their social media when they can. All right.
Thank you for your help.
All right, thank you for your patience. Thank you all for being here. And again, we'll provide those updates when we can. All right, thank you.